Documentaries are quite informative and sometimes very painful. And this is one of them that makes it very painful and to know the how oblivious we are to what is going on out there. Just tell me about how you came up and got involved into making this documentary happen.
Well, in 2019, the fires in the Amazon made international headlines, and I was in my home state of Oregon. I've been an environmental documentarian for a number of years, and I was just shocked, at a time right now in the world where, I mean, in the West Coast in Oregon, we're experiencing wildfires every year. There are wildfires happening in Europe, in Russia, all over the place. I was just so confused about why would be burning the Amazon on purpose, and just felt a very deep calling to help and do something about it. And with my creative partner at the time, we decided to dive into a project to bring back as much information as we could about what was happening and really set out to make a film, not just a film, but something that would have impact, that would actually be able to help the communities in the Amazon. And Starting that trip, I was in a real understanding of, wow, this whole situation is way more complicated than I anticipated. And so it really began to snowball from there, because it's really not as simple as you saw in the film. It's really not a simple issue. It's very multi-layered. And Chelsea, meanwhile, was in her travels in Africa, and I think having a very similar experience, a similar calling when she heard about the fires.
Yeah, there were a lot of things in my life that led up to it. I had worked on a documentary in Borneo about the deforestation happening for palm oil there. And I was just so shocked that this one commodity that's in so many cheap products that is just destroying one of the most important ecosystems in the planet, the tropical rainforest specifically, control so much of the moisture circulation, which, is important for all of us, all around the planet, even though there are a lot of times around the equator, the effects are so far reaching. And of course, with carbon storage, the Amazon, I learned, had 10 years of global fossil fuel emissions stored in it. So to burn it was unthinkable. And this is in 2017. And actually, Brazil had reduced deforestation greatly, and was a leader in that space between 2004 and 2014 or so. And so I was struck when I heard that the new president had gotten in and undone all of the progress they'd made and just said, no, go burn the forest now in the middle of a climate crisis. It was just crazy. But this origin story of me and Rob independently having this idea to both go to Brazil and start filming, even though we'd never been there. And I had some connections from my other projects. But then, yeah, we just, at the same time, I think we even passed each other in a hallway filming the same scientist one
Yeah, in
day.
the same afternoon.
Yeah, the same afternoon. We didn't meet them. A journalist introduced us. And then months later, we started talking, and I moved to Oregon to work with him. I've been living on the East Coast in DC until then. And then the next year, when we went back after we'd amassed our team, and we met our co-director Edjivan. The film is co-directed by an indigenous filmmaker, from Brazil, and so that really formulated the perfect storm for how We Are Guardians came to be.
So one of the things that it's really painful to see is that we actually there are very there's politics involved in all this. There's greed most of all, but this documentary has one main villain, and you would not think that that person has a name. Bolsonaro is his
Mhm.
name, and it's so sad. And now I'm wondering how he feels about this documentary.
I would love to know that too.
I would love to know that too.
There's a lot of
Probably,
backlash against him from so many directions, I'm sure.
yeah, he probably doesn't like this documentary, doesn't agree with it. He sees, dollar signs when he sees the Amazon and when he sees the trees and when he sees the land and the potential there. And he doesn't see the value of the indigenous people. He doesn't see the value of really this incredible biome like Chelsea was talking about. It is the like foremost climate stabilizer in the world, and it's also like the beating heart of our planet. I mean, it's just absolutely pulsing with life. and so much biodiversity. And to lose it would be such a tragedy to all of planet Earth. It would be awful.
Yeah, and you say the one villain of the film is Bolsonaro. I mean, Bolsonaro is influenced by these big companies, the multinational corporations, the biggest meat producer in the world, JBS, Cargill. They are hugely influential, along with, of course, the mining companies and the logging companies. But there's an investigative journalism group that we worked with that's tracking which companies are influencing Brazilian politics the most. And a lot of them are selling products to US buyers. And so we all need to be aware when we buy store brand grocery store meat, a lot of times it could be from JBS, could be from deforestation. Cargill has been caught over and over again committing crimes like child slavery and illegal logging, and they're providing all of the eggs to Walmart and feeding the chickens with soy from the Amazon, for example. So it's so interconnected in our food system, and we can all do our part by buying locally. And I'm not saying don't eat meat, maybe eat less, but buy local really, and pay attention to what you're supporting when you're going to the store. And maybe we can all come up with some kind of way to pressure these companies and get these products out of your local store or out of a chain. We need to come together for this and send them a message.
Indeed. And in your documentary, you also show us how so many illegal actions suddenly are so legal, according to the local law enforcement, that curates to making all these things happen.
Hmm.
And
Yeah, it's
talk a little bit about filming that and getting acts like how the for filmmaking purposes they got access to be close to these locations.
it's the Wild West in the Amazon in Brazil. I mean, it's a really dangerous area. There's a lot of boom and bust economies when it comes to wood, when it comes to mining, when it comes to the agricultural landscape. And there's a lot of money to be had. And it's different than living in the United States. I'd say there's a lot of violence that happens. Our best to arrive to different people that we were hoping to interview in a way of just wanting to really honestly hear their stories and to speak with them in a way that in a way of listening rather than a way of trying to assert what we thought should be happening, but really understanding and wanting to know what's going on for you. Valgier, who's one of the loggers in the film, we honestly wanted to understand what was his life like. What are your trials? What are your goals? What do you dream about? What makes you angry? And I think Valgier, in a lot of ways, was waiting for somebody to give him a space to be heard in that way. Um, but yeah, trust was a huge thing to grow as we were involved with filming with these different groups. I mean, the indigenous especially, they were very leery of just outsiders coming in, wanting to tell their story. They have experienced a lot of unfortunate situations where journalists come in, they get their story, and then they leave, and they're never heard from again. They're not really bringing it much back to the community at all, if at all. So, we really wanted to also be different in that way. It was important to us to come back and to really bring value to their community.
Oh, I was just gonna say we have an impact campaign with the film, so we're able to bring funds and manage projects in the Amazon to help them protect and regenerate their territories. So just following up a little bit with what Rob said there, and also speaking to the police, and you were commenting on their involvement and sometimes corruption. I mean, imagine the Amazon is like the size of the United States. It's a huge area and it's just so vast. And, there's these economies that based on extracting these things, and a lot of people have no options. And so, of course, there's corrupt police and not corrupt police. We went with some not corrupt police out on some missions. We're able to see, inside of their life. And it's just so crazy to think about so many people trying to cut the trees down and this small amount of people in this huge area trying to enforce the laws. So there needs to be the generation of the forest needs to be more valuable standing up than cut down. First of all, there needs to be incentivization programs, carbon credits, whatever it needs to be well managed to give these local economies a boost without having to cut the forest down. And yeah, that's basically one of the bigger solutions there to help these local areas that are so vast and it's hard and more honestly, money and law enforcement. The world needs to be taking part in helping Brazil with this huge task.
That's true. I mean, for example, you mentioned that China and the US is one of the highest buyers. I mean, maybe push here, right? Maybe push to make you look into changes using substituting material, at least a percentage of it. I don't know. I think in a way, the root starts with us and the demand.
Absolutely. It really does. Yeah, if we weren't buying these products and pushing the demand, and then the banks that are invested in these big companies as well, a lot of us bank with them.
I'm glad I don't bank with B of A.
Yeah, there you go. Great, you're already a guardian.
Thank you. Well, thanks to you.
Oh,
And a little bit about you mentioned Rob Valdier. That was very brave in his involvement in opening his door and his family. Uh, do you think that he he did it on a purpose to maybe, I don't know, seek change?
Yeah, I mean, he wants to see change happen and he wants to see a better life for his family. I think deep down, there's a lot of cognitive dissonance that we saw with Valdir, but I think deep down he doesn't like to be cutting down the forest and he's been doing this his entire life. He started when he was a 9 or 10 years old at working in that industry. And that's all he's ever known. And, towards the end of the film, he has a brilliant, a line about education. And that's really the most important thing is getting a good education and something I think that he really missed out on. So I think that, he wants to be able to give something more to his family. He wants to give his children something, that they can really do more with than just tearing down the forest. And I think that, a lot of his motivations come from that. I was saying also too that like I don't think a lot of people have really given him an ear to be heard. And he really appreciated that and a chance to let, the world know what was going on for him. It's yeah, it's unfortunate what's happening with people like Valgier, and it's also, I think, really important for us to depolarize this issue and recognize the humanity of people in these situations. That these aren't all bad people, and they're really in a situation, a product of circumstance, a product of a system that, really kind of impresses upon them maybe only this option. And so finding other options for loggers like Valgier would be amazing.
Yeah, at first I was like, I don't like this guy. And then my perspective little by little changed. Not that I'm a major fan now, but you kind of see the other perspective, the other side of the story too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's got a pretty rough exterior. He's a pretty gnarly dude. But he also, for us, I mean, maybe it doesn't shine through so much in the film, but the way that him and his friends took care of us while we were out there, making sure we were super well fed, making sure that we were always good, that we were kind of being protected because it's very dangerous, the work that they're doing. It was really amazing, how he took care of us in that way. So I will always feel that connection and that to him.
yeah, he's got a heart of gold. When the other loggers in the territory found out that we were filming there and started sending us death threats and found out that he was connected with the filming, he still stood up for us. He still wanted to do that barbecue scene with his family in town, even with all of this pushback. And thankfully he's safe. He's no longer logging. He's somewhat retired now. So yeah, just so everyone knows he's safe.
Does that mean that Tadeo and Valdir are now friends?
Tadeo and Balgier, I don't think they're friends. They live a bit further apart, like maybe like 5 or so hours, right, Rob?
Yeah, I like that idea though. Maybe we should
Yeah,
get them together.
right?
Right? Yeah, and then
Yeah,
they can work together, united.
That's so
yeah, I
true.
love that.
Tadeo probably needs help reforesting his land.
Could be. Now, I guess that this movie is also coming out right before the United Nations Climate Change Conference that's going to be held. What's that message that you hope for that sinks in? I mean, there are so many, obviously, but your personal one.
Right. Well, top of mind is that the protection of the Amazon and tropical forest needs to be seen as central to climate solutions. The climate summits are so much talk about all the climate solutions, but with the Amazon at a critical tipping point, where the deforestation and climate change combined has gotten so bad that the forest is starting to burn up and dry out on its own. And we have to stop deforestation, reforest urgently in order to stop this process, which they don't, it could be disastrous. So this COP being in the Amazon is an incredible opportunity that we won't get again, for the world's attention to be on the Amazon, being in Belém, actually where Puyi lives. It's also going to be a COP with a lot more Indigenous representation. Puyi Tembe, one of the main characters of the film, is doing a tour around Brazil, training Indigenous leaders, especially women, to come and participate in the COP. And their goal is to get 100 accredited Indigenous representatives inside of the Blue Zone to actually be a part of the negotiations. But they need support, so we need to help them with funding and make sure that that happens. It's really important that they not be left out of these negotiations, being the people feeling the direct effects of these decision makers' decisions. So at the COP, there needs to be movement forward to vote for legislation that will protect the Amazon permanently, independent of whoever the president of the Amazon countries happens to be at the time. It needs to somehow make sure that the big companies cannot continue with these illegal activities, and with the corruption that they're perpetrating. And there needs to be a lot of funding into supply chain transparency and accountability. So that's really what we'd like to see at the COP30.
I appreciate your time. And Rob, can you close with telling us how we can continue and be a part of the Guardians?
Yeah, I mean, the one of the core messages of the film is truly that we're all guardians. And if the Amazon is a place that feels so far away for you, there's ways that we can, become guardians of our local biomes, of our communities. And I think it's really important to consider expanding our sense of what our community is beyond just the humans that we live around. To understanding our community really involves our water in our local area, our air, our soil and land, our forests. And there are so many ways that we can step up to protect our own areas in that kind of way. We can join your local county commissioner's office and run for office there. You can protect a river or do a trash cleanup day. There's lots of little things that we can do. And then bigger ways. I mean, I love the way that Pui says, reforest your mind and reforest your heart. And to me, that's really kind of a bigger spiritual kind of recalibration of what it means to be here on Earth and what it means to be a human, and recognizing the interconnection of all of us, of all the forests, of the water, and finding a space that we can live so that we're living in that more wild way in that way where the earth is really there offering what it does. It offers us so much. It gives us everything. And so the health of our forest, the health of our water is really our health. And we can step up. And I know that I have a lot of hope for humanity in that way. I think as a species we feel kind of young and we're learning, but I still have a lot of hope.
Well, thank you for those words. Thank you for that reminder and encouragement that those little things, once we all contribute, it adds up and can make a difference.
It really does.
Well, thank you both for your time again. Congratulations with your documentary. And I hope this documentary is like really out there in people's face so we can start making our own changes, even with our pennies.
Oh, thank you so much, Nancy. I'm really excited for you all to join us at the theatrical tour this summer. Come and check out the film in theaters.
Great. Well, we'll make sure to include the dates.
Perfect.
Thanks
Awesome.
again.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Nancy.
You're welcome. You too.